Welcome back. After nearly 40 years with the district, 8 of those years spent as superintendent, Lori White is retiring in February. Todd Bowden will now be taking over for White as superintendent, and he'll oversee 52 schools, more than 42,000 students, and 5,000 employees. Joining us for more on this critical job of superintendent is Shirley Brown, the chair of Sarasota County School Board, and Kerry Kirshner, who served as executive director of the Argus Foundation for more than 2 decades. Thank you both for joining us. And Shirley, let me start with you because you didn't originally vote for Mr. Bowden, but are you happy with what his hiring in the end, and what direction, what difference do you want him to make in terms of our school district?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we all work together, and that's why I moved for the unanimous vote after originally, looking for the guy from St. John's. But I think what we're looking for now is to pull everything together in a business sense. There's a lot of business communities. They're all talking about we've got to be a career and college ready, but that's just part of it. And Mr. Bowden understands that, and that's why I know he's talking about hiring an assistant superintendent, again, as Lori used to be, in charge of academics. And that's a very important core that we need to be looking at the front end to make sure that we put those right basics down for these kids, but also give them something exciting to look forward to, like the Career Academy we recently had, to keep the kids in school.
Well, so let me see if I have this straight. Obviously, and all the candidates said that the #1 priority is keeping the A rating for the school system, but you're saying to me that one of your big priorities is making sure that the school system was in good hands in terms of the management, and you could hire another assistant superintendent to focus more on the academics?
Well, I think we wanted to have somebody for academics for some time, but over the cuts that we had, Lori White was quite able to handle that. So we'd known we needed to hand someone over the academic part. Wasn't sure when it was going to be, but it's going to be now. But we also have, it's the largest employer in the county. And so we have to make sure that it's run as well as it can be. Mr. Lempe is doing a good job at that right now, and Todd's going to be a very important part on how we move forward too, because he even has at the technical school, he's got a tech tots. So he does from pre-K all the way through college and after.
Kerry, you have been watching this school district and observing for many years now. What were your impressions in terms of what was needed and what you're getting?
Well, if you look at the overall Sarasota school system, it's recognized throughout the state as one of the best. Our problem has always been not the high achievers who are college bound, but those who are not college bound and come into the lower socioeconomic areas of our community, and they're dropping out. And with Mr. Bowden's background in technical education, he's filled a void that for many years it was very poor. As an example, we would have maybe 150 students who would do auto mechanic work, but in order to get a job today in an auto dealership because of the technical aspects, you really need at least a 2-year degree in technical skills. So very few of those children were actually going out into the workplace. If they got any job, they were changing oil or doing something menial like that. So we've moved past the time where we could just have the bell curve where 10% at the top, 10% at the bottom, and everybody else in the middle, and not have to worry about it. We have to worry about all our students. And I think we're moving ahead in a very positive position in making Sarasota an educational package for all students in Sarasota County.
We're just getting started here. We have to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll go live back to our weather forecast with Bob Harrigan. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing Sarasota School Superintendent, a role that will be soon held by Todd Bowden. Our guests tonight are School Board Chair Shirley Brown and Kerry Kirshner, who served as Executive Director of the Argus Foundation for more than 2 decades. And congratulations again with your retirement from Argus. I know it was a while ago. Shirley, I saw an editorial in done by our friends at the Sarasota Herald, who said, you know, of the finalists, there was only one superintendent, and obviously Mr. Bowden was a local applicant, and the question or the thrust of it, why wasn't Sarasota looking more broadly for its next superintendent? If you could address that.
Well, one of the things we wanted was somebody that had some either local experience or administrative experience in Florida was very important to us, because Florida is very complex in the way that the laws that come down on the funding formulas that they have. But we had a very qualified candidate in the assistant superintendent, the one that I had originally supported, Brennan Asplin. He's the assistant superintendent in charge of academics in St. Johns County, the #1 county in the state of Florida. You know, I thought that was a wonderful, and the superintendent down in the Keys, you know, he's had some challenges, and he was a superintendent also up in Minnesota. You know, he had some good points, but the Keys only had 8,000 students.
Would there have been merit to find somebody who may have been the superintendent in a larger district who has that kind of experience and may have been interested in coming down here?
Let me just say this, Al. I've watched over the years superintendents come and go. Lori White certainly didn't have the background of being a superintendent before she got the job. I think back to a guy by the name of Dr. Chuck Fowler, who had an unbelievable resume. Unfortunately, when he took the job, everybody was very excited about it because he had this wonderful resume. He spent most of his time going to other communities giving speeches on education, and spent very little time here. And so it's very difficult to just look at a resume and expect that person's going to deliver. You know, when you really get down to it, our best superintendents have been the ones who end up with hands-on experience and have proven that, you know, they'll get down and dirty. The problem that you've got in a system like ours, which is so big, the school system is so big with so many schools, each one of those schools has its own different problems. So it's not a simple, you know, in most school systems in the Northeast, you know, the city of Sarasota would have its own school system and would just, you know, and there'd be a superintendent. You know, we have a massive organization, and we have a system in the state of Florida that goes, you know, that is controlled so much by the state that the local school board doesn't have control over.
I want to get to that in a moment, but first, you know, we have to talk about what Christopher described in the story in terms of the allegations of harassment that you basically had to investigate. Are you comfortable with what the investigation showed in terms of the allegations, and that they were not proven, and that Mr. Bowden has a clean slate?
Well, there were only rumors. There were no complaints filed. Apparently, after so Superintendent White wanted to do an investigation, and they looked, I think they came back inconclusive, and I forgot what the other word was, but they didn't find against him. Unfounded, inconclusive and unfounded, and it was sort of like a he said, she said. Well, then they took it one step further, and I think the day before we were to vote on it, apparently a lie detector was taken and they turned in the complaint, but I think it was late filed. We didn't see it, and they hadn't been investigated, although I think they said this was investigated once. But you can't choose on rumors. I mean, I know that, you know, with his MBA, his local experience, and there was a lot of community people that were supporting Todd. And I know that held along a strong impression on the school board members who originally voted for him.
Right. I want to get to two other issues. One that you brought up, which is the limitations that any school district or any superintendent has because of both federal and state mandates. One in Florida that, as we all know, just drives parents, students, and teachers and administrators absolutely crazy is the standardized testing. I know, having kids gone through the system, and one who still is, that any effort to do extra work at some point in the school years is set aside because teachers have to teach to the test, and people are really concerned that's not really the right way for learning. Can the superintendent or the the school board? Can they do anything about that, or there has to be a more concerted effort with our state legislature to change things?
The reason the state legislature wanted all these tests is because they had business people coming to them. They had community college and university trustees coming to them saying, we're getting these kids and they don't know how to read. They don't know how to, add. They aren't ready to work. So the legislator said, well, we can't trust the teachers because they just pass everyone on. So we have to have these tests. Now, the tests really should be diagnostic to let the teachers know where the kids need help. And I know we keep coming up with new plans on how we're going to teach these kids to read. They went away from the way that we learned with the phonics. Now they had a whole language thing. And I was just reading an article from Great Schools today that said, well, the whole language thing has basically been debunked. We need to go back to having some of those phonics in there and some of the rules to get these kids to read. There's always something new coming out, and it's in charge of the superintendent to make sure that we get the right things there to get the basics in for these kids.
Kerry, I wanted to give you a chance to jump in on this.
Yeah, Al, I think the sad thing, in our country is we have this idea that everybody learns at the same level. Everybody, should have the same opportunity because they're sitting in the classroom. For years, I was on the board of directors of an organization called Success by Six. And we found that so many of these children in daycare centers are siloed, they're not being taught anything. And by the time they get into kindergarten, they're already behind children who have had some idea of phonics and some learning. So what we have done, we have expected that when you start school, everybody's starting at the same level, and they're not. And as Shirley says, what we need to do is identify these children and help them progress, because we're putting them behind by expecting them at the 4th grade to all perform at the same level.
Another thing we need to do is we need to get the people that are teaching, the teachers for daycare centers, and the ones who are teaching elementary school, and the ones who are teaching our teachers in elementary school to get on the same plane. We've got child development associates telling the teachers in child care it's developmentally inappropriate to teach ABCs and 1, 2, 3s for pre-K.
One other issue I wanted to get to before our next break is the transgender bathroom issue. Mr. Bowden said in Christopher's story that there shouldn't be a policy where you have the president saying to all school districts there needs to be a policy. You have other school districts who are having that policy. Is basically Sarasota punting the football when it comes to this?
You are, as many people are, confusing policy with procedure. The president isn't telling us we have to have a policy. The president is telling us we have to have a procedure. That if these students come to us, it doesn't work the same for every school. The facilities aren't the same for every school. At Suncoast Technical, there are single-use bathrooms all up and down the halls. There's different stalls in some of the schools. It is going to be decided now. We just learned today that the Supreme Court has taken up the GG case. It'll be decided.
We have less than 45 seconds. I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this.
What bothers me, Al, is we have such a problem in this country in education, and that we focus on these distracting issues like this, as opposed to, worrying about the dumbing down of the next generation, which is really of much greater concern, I think, than all these side issues that seem to take place.
It's not distracting to the people who are confronted personally.
Well, I realize that, but I don't know how you get everybody on the same page unless you just have a dedicated transgender bathroom for every school, and then
you can't have that.
and therein lies the problem. We get into these conundrums, and we spend all our time worrying about something that has nothing to do with educating our children.
Let's take one more break, and when we come back, we'll have final thoughts with our guests, plus comments on last night's show. Welcome back. Come March 1st, Todd Bowden will be taking over as head of the Sarasota County School District. So what can we expect from the transition? And our guests join us for final thoughts. Shirley, are you looking for a continuation of the great work of Lori White, or something now? Is it now time for something a little bit different?
Well, there's no one that's going to be changing this vote because you just can't just turn it. And Todd understands that. It is not just the superintendent who runs our schools and wants to see our schools succeed. You see, the businesses are very much involved with it. We've got the Success by Six, and we've got the Coalition for Reading Success. We've got a whole bunch of people in this community that are working together to improve our schools. We've got the support of our referendum. It is not just on Todd's shoulders. It is going to be the school board and the schools all working together with our community to make sure that he succeeds, but not so much him, our schools succeed. That's what's important.
Kerry, is this the right man for the right time?
That's to be seen. But what it boils down to, as Shirley said, it's not just the community, it's also the teachers' union. The teachers' union has to get behind the teaching initiatives. You know, there was a famous head of a union that once said, when the students start paying the dues, I'll worry about the students. Well, you know, we're past that time, and we have to be very focused on bringing the union to the interests of the students and the community.
You're shaking your head.
I totally, our union has been working closely with us. You know, there's no one that wants a bad teacher in the school system less than anyone from our union. We work together with them, and there's no one who wants our kids to succeed more than the teachers.
And
that's what they're there for.
And we'll have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about last night's show. Our focus was Amendment 1, more commonly known as Consumers for Smart Solar. Supporters say if it passes, it will keep people who don't use solar panels from subsidizing those who do. Opponents say the utility-backed amendment will block third-party competition and stunt the growth of solar in the Sunshine State. Scott Dunlap writes, Florida utility companies expect to make a big return on the over $21 million they are spending to push this through. They don't care about their customers. All they care about is controlling solar power and making more money. Aldana Tamkis writes, considering the enormous lobby money and campaign contributions spent by Florida utilities, Amendment 1 leaves the door open for greater utility control in the future. And Kevin Kumanga writes, it shows just how duplicitous the utility companies are trying to pass this off as pro-solar. Vote no. If you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And if you want to watch past Roundtable discussions, they're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. I want to thank both our guests for being here tonight. Shirley Brown is the chairwoman of the Sarasota County School Board. Kerry Kirshner served as executive director of the Argus Foundation for more than 2 decades.